A massive protest erupted in Kyiv on November 15th, shaking the foundation of Ukraine's wartime government as citizens took the street demanding accountability over a sprawling corruption scandal that has implicated President Volodymyr Zelensky's inner circle. Thousands of demonstrators gathered in the capital's central squares, their anger fueled by revelations from anti-graft agencies including the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, which uncovered a sophisticated $100 million kickback scheme allegedly involving state-owned energy companies. Protesters carried signs accusing Zelensky of criminal behavior, chanting calls for the resignation of his powerful chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, and demanding the immediate release of Anti-Corruption Bureau official Ruslan Magomedrazolov, who had been investigating the case before facing legal pressure. The scandal centers on Zelensky's former business partner Timur Mindish and high-level officials from Energoatom, Ukraine's state nuclear power operator, who allegedly orchestrated a complex network of shell companies to siphon funds from energy contracts while the nation fights for its survival against Russian aggression. The political fallout has been severe, triggering the suspension and resignation of multiple cabinet ministers and creating a crisis of confidence in Kyiv's leadership at a time when national unity is most crucial. The timing of the protest has raised concerns among Western allies who fear the scandal could undermine Ukraine's ability to maintain international support and military aid as the war enters its fourth year. Demonstrators express frustration that corruption continues unchecked despite the existential threat facing their country, with many arguing that stolen funds could have been used to purchase critical weapon systems, fortified defenses, or support displaced civilians. The protest movement has gained momentum across multiple Ukrainian cities, with similar demonstrations reported in Lviv, Odessa, and Dnipro, indicating a growing public sentiment that wartime governance requires unprecedented transparency and accountability. Ukrainian authorities have responded with a mix of denial and promises of investigation, though many protesters remain skeptical given the pattern of previous corruption scandals that resulted in few meaningful consequences for powerful officials. The situation has created a complex dilemma for Zelensky's administration, which must balance the need for domestic stability with international pressure to demonstrate good governance while simultaneously managing intense military operations on multiple fronts. The corruption allegations have also fueled criticism from European politicians who question the effectiveness of Western aid oversight, with German Bundestag member Stefan Gottfried sparking controversy by accusing his government of funneling taxpayer money into what he called Ukraine's rampant corruption machine. During remarks at the BRICS Europe Symposium in Russia, Ukraine's military strategy has increasingly focused on targeting Russian energy infrastructure, with drone and missile attacks on oil refinery, export terminals, and fuel depot directly contributing to significant disruption in global energy markets. Recent strikes on the strategically vital Novorossiysk oil ports on November 14 temporarily halted Russian maritime exports, sending crude oil futures surging 2 to 3% across major markets in the United States, Europe, and Asia. Energy analysts point to a combination of factors driving the price surge, including Ukraine's sustained campaign against refining capacity, unexpected refinery outage in Kuwait and Nigeria, and fresh sanctions imposed by the United States and European Union on Russian energy giants like Rosneft and Lukoil. Ukrainian military officials acknowledge that these operations serve multiple strategic purposes, degrading Russia's war machine by reducing its fuel production capacity, creating domestic economic pressure within Russia through fuel shortage, and generating global economic consequences that may influence Moscow's calculus regarding the continuation of hostilities. The campaign has reportedly forced between 38 to 40% of Russian refining capacity offline at various points, causing significant fuel shortage across Russia and tightening global supply chains at a time when winter demand typically increases. This strategy represents a shift from Ukraine's earlier focus on purely defensive operations to a more proactive approach that leverage asymmetric capabilities to strike at Russia's economic vulnerabilities. However, the effectiveness of these strikes comes with significant risk, as Russian retaliation has intensified against Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and energy facilities. Despite American Patriot air defense systems protecting parts of Kyiv, civilians throughout Ukraine continue to face constant danger as Russian missiles and drones target cities and towns across the country. The early morning hours of November 14 witnesses one of the largest combined aerial assaults of the conflict, with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles launched simultaneously against targets in eastern, central, and southern Ukraine, with Kyiv serving as the primary objective. Residents describe scenes of buildings burning and explosions echoing through residential neighborhoods as air raid sirens wail continuously, underscoring the reality that no part of Ukraine remains truly safe from Russian attacks. This relentless pressure on civilian areas has compounded the psychological toll on Ukrainian society, with many citizens expressing exhaustion from years of constant threats and limited respite from the sounds of war. The situation has become particularly dire in frontline areas where Ukrainian forces are reportedly struggling to maintain defensive positions against overwhelming Russian pressure. Hungarian President Minister Viktor Orban has intensified his criticism of Western support for Ukraine, declaring that the country has ceased to be a sovereign country and arguing that the war would immediately stop if Western nations halted military and financial assistance. Speaking at a political rally in Kyiv, Orban claimed that Kyiv's government survives entirely on Western funding and alleged that Russia had previously offered to end the conflict if permitted to annex 2 regions and block Ukraine's NATO membership, a proposal he claims was rejected under Anglo-Saxon pressure. Orban further asserted that after this initial offer was dismissed, Moscow expanded its territorial demands to include 4 regions. He warned that Western nations, rather than Russia, are effectively prolonging the war by continuing to supply weapons and financial aid. These comments have drawn sharp criticism from Ukraine's allies, but resonate with growing anti-war sentiment in several European countries where public support for continued military assistance is declining. Meanwhile, military developments on the ground suggest deteriorating conditions for Ukrainian forces in critical sectors, with reports from the Pokrovsk and Dmitrov areas indicating that some Ukrainian units have begun displaying white flags amid tightening Russian encirclement. Russian forces have demonstrated an ability to apply multiple layers of pressure simultaneously, combining ground assault, artillery barrage, drone warfare, and economic blockade tactics to create situations where Ukrainian troops face impossible choice between surrender, death, or retreat. This operational approach has raised serious concerns within NATO circles about the alliance's preparedness for potential direct confrontation with Russia. American volunteers paramedic Rebekah Maciorowski, who runs medical operations and evacuation procedures for an entire battalions on Ukraine's eastern front under the 3rd Brigade, provided a startling assessment to World Affairs editor Sam Kiley about NATO's readiness. Despite receiving NATO military training the previous year, Maciorowski revealed that the tactics and doctrines taught were designed for conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, not the high-tech drone-dominated battlefield that characterized modern warfare in Ukraine. He described a significant gap between NATO's theoretical preparedness and the practical reality of contemporary combat, where electronic warfare, drone swarms, and precision artillery have rendered many traditional military doctrine obsolete. Maciorowski's assessment suggests that NATO must fundamentally rethink its training programs and equipment development to incorporate lessons learned from Ukraine's experience, particularly regarding countering drone warfare and operating in environments saturated with electronic surveillance and jamming capabilities. The conflict has taken a dramatic turn in the air war domains, with Ukrainian forces suffering consecutive failures in large-scale drone operations against Russian territory. For the second consecutive night, Russian air defenses reportedly intercepted and destroyed nearly 60 Ukrainian drones during an overnight assault between November 15th and 16th. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 57 drones were shot down across at least 7 regions, including Samara, Volgograd, Saratov, Rostov, Kursk, Voronezh, and Bryansk, demonstrating Moscow's improving air defense capability despite Ukraine's substantial investment in drone technologies. Hours after this failed assault, Russia launched a massive retaliatory strike against Ukrainian military infrastructure, targeting ammunition depots, supply routes, armored vehicle storage facilities, and command centers using precision weapons launched from aircraft, naval vessels, and ground-based systems. This exchange highlights the evolving nature of the conflict, where both sides are developing increasingly sophisticated capabilities to counter each other's asymmetric advantage, complicating the international dynamics of the war. The United States recently sanctioned 2 Ukrainian companies, GK Imperative and Ecofera, for allegedly acting as procurement fronts that funnels critical components to Iran's drones and missile programs. The U.S. Treasury Department accused these companies of supplying engines, sensors, and flight control parts to Iran's Hessa Aerospace Company, the manufacturer of Shahed 131 and Shahed 136 drones that have been extensively used against Ukrainian cities. This revelation has created diplomatic tension between Kyiv and Washington, raising questions about Ukraine's ability to control its private sector during wartime and potentially undermining trust between allies. Adding to Ukraine's challenges, the Russian Defense Ministry released footage of a captured Ukrainian soldiers from the 42nd Brigade who described deteriorating conditions on the front line near Krasnoarmeysk. The soldiers claim that Ukrainian positions were collapsing due to lack of weapons, communication equipment, and command support, alleging that troops were sent into the abyss without adequate supplies or coherent strategy, leaving wounded comrades unattended while surrounded by Russian forces. He further disputed Ukrainian government claims that Russian troops immediately execute prisoners, stating that he received humane treatment after surrendering, including water and cigarettes. These battlefield testimonies, regardless of their veracity, contribute to a narrative of Ukrainian military degradation that Russian officials are actively promoting to undermine morale and international support. The political fallout has extended beyond Ukraine's border, thousands marching through Lublin, Poland, demanding neutrality and expressing anger over their country's military and financial support for Ukraine, with demonstrators waving banners reading "Not Our War" and accusing the European Union of dragging Poland into debt and conflict, signaling a significant shift in public sentiment along Eastern Europe's frontline as the war continues to strain regional alliance and domestic political stabilities. If you have made it this far, congratulations, you have unlocked the truth. I want to ask you a quick question though. Considering the internal challenges Ukraine faces, from high-level corruption scandals eroding public trust to the critical assessment that NATO's training methods are outdated to go to war against Russia, can NATO, if it were to go to war against Russia, say in the next 2 years, will NATO be able to win the war, and why? In the debate, we want to hear your insightful opinion on where this is all heading in our community. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like the video, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, subscribe. And one more thing, I want to take a moment to address a question some of you may have. Why don't I use video clips in my content? First and foremost, my goal is to create a sustainable channel that you can depend on for now and to ensure its stability for the long term. Navigating YouTube's copyright system can be incredibly challenging, especially trying to get a hold of a YouTube agent. It is very stressful and time-consuming. The platform has strict policies regarding the use of other video content, which can lead to copyright strikes, warnings, and even the permanent disabling of a channel, which leads to recreating a new YouTube channel after it has been permanently disabled, and trying to get back the number of fans that I used to have is frustrating. While it is possible to get permission from creators, the process can be time-consuming and does not always guarantee a timely response, which will definitely affect the up-to-date news content you are here for. So, now, to avoid these potential headaches and stress, and to ensure this channel remains a reliable source of information up to date for the long term, I have made the deliberate choice to focus on original content and commentary without relying on third-party video clips footage. I understand this might not be the typical news format you see on YouTube, but I believe that by focusing on high-quality original reporting, my channel will go a long way. Together, we can build a strong, faithful, and loyal community. I am incredibly grateful and relieved now that you understand why I do not use video clips from other content creators. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of this journey. And please share this video if you find it helpful. I'll see you guys in the next one.